The meantime allows flip our interest to a number of the alternative main information today, and in Mexico at least 39 people have died in a fireplace to migrant center close to the border with the blaze broke out that an immigration facility in Ciudad Juárez that is near the stands and worldwide bridge that links the metropolis to El Paso, Texas. This turned into the scene outdoor, the building in a single day with the emergency offerings in attendance. Isn't yet clear what precipitated the fire at some of the victims are thought to be migrants who'd been arrested in the town the day earlier. Then there has been some reviews suggesting they have been detained within the locker rooms. Alert. LOL, yeah, I spoke to David Noriega, is a journalist Vice News. He covers Latin the USA migration and the S border, and he gave me this replace. The simply important things recollects that the state of affairs on the border, particularly at the southern side of the border of Mexico aspect of the border, is the fabricated from a years-long effort by way of the U.S. in collaboration with Mexico to prevent the access of migrants into U.S. territory in which they are able to legally declare asylum. What this has ended in is a again years-long accumulation of migrant populations on the Mexican aspect of the border into Mexico-Indian border cities all alongside or the Mexican side of the line, what is being manifestly one in every of the largest. So the motive something like this may appear within the first area is because the USA has been pushing these human beings consistently below each trunk and Biden. The Mexico side main to overcrowded shelters. Overcrowded detention is extraordinarily hectic on relationships between migrant communities and Mexican immigration authorities had been acting as centrally as proxies of strange the USA, and you already know you've got conditions like this one in which you have got large numbers of migrants crowded right into a facility, and that I were in a fireplace bro. X out, it is almost unavoidably sincerely devastated. I'm simply seeing a line. This is coming in from the Mexican president of his Obrador, saying that the migrants that died in that fire, the migrants who died in that file on the whole from vital the USA and Venezuela, does that marvel you at all, or is that the most possibly the vicinity from wherein they would have all started their journeys? No, it is no longer sudden in any respect, given what the migrant blows had been currently on. I'm curious to recognize, and will need to discover, wherein an imperative America the migrants were from. My wager could be Nicaragua, it is in which loads of critical American migrants had been coming from. Currently in Venezuela, it's well worth noting to that are humans fleeing the ones international locations specifically are fleeing governments that the U.S.A. considers enemy situations. People are you recognize and over again may have ordinary these people with open palms arm, however below the contemporary, are underneath the modern scenario, is type of doing everything possible to push them back. And with humans paying. Held in facilities like this one generally, how long might they be staying there for? Are we talking a relay of hours, days, weeks, or longer? It varies enormously because lots of those rules are not specifically obvious or illegible. You recognize, I think you may say, everywhere from days to indefinitely are relying on the circumstances, depending at the nearby government, depending on what forms of pressure the USA is putting on Mexican officers at that particular time. I am getting been there all on form of political and coverage goals stateside. It's no longer something that may be effortlessly, I assume it is no longer a question that may be replied kind of systematic manner throughout the board. And if we are seeing this a bottleneck of humans trying to migrate and these numbers being detained on the border, what's it that is riding of as in the back of them to still take the risk of creating that perilous adventure whilst presumably reviews of what's took place might attain them of the conditions their fleet attitude or trying to pass far from must be so intense that they're still inclined to take that threat. You're asking without a doubt a question. This is its kind of the question that American policymakers commonly refuse to invite themselves, that the all of American border policy to regression policy is primarily based at the concept of deterrence. It's based totally on the idea that if you make crossing the border tough sufficient for my grunts are then they may kind of together decide that it is no longer worth making the trek. It really is one of the most kind of bubbly incorrect ideas I think available at the it is apparent because of the way that the numbers keep developing huge way which can be migrants are willing to do such things as traverse the Among Colombian Panama, the reality that they're inclined to crowd inch where our vans and die in huge numbers, and they preserve coming glaringly as border coverage, does no longer as a deterrent, and yet us policymakers from each the Democratic and Republican birthday celebration retain running as though that assumption have been correct, while it's really now not no longer why they maintain coming. Suppose you recognize you while I've spoken to migrants who make this kind of adventure, the purpose is easy, it's the conditions of existence that they may be dealing with of their domestic international locations are intolerable, and they are willing to undergo all manner of unbelievable pain and struggling to enhance their lot for some of distinct reasons that modify in line with the United States of America and the time, and that hasn't stopped, and I do not see it preventing each time quickly.